Hopefully with that energy, I am now going to turn this over to our first presenter, who will be talking with us about sustainability. And we're really glad to have Sean Griffin with us to talk through sustainability and help us sort of kick this day off. Sean, are you ready?
I'm ready. Can you all hear me?
We can.
Terrific. Well, thanks so much for inviting me to join you all today. We're going to talk about a data-driven approach to sustainability planning. And this framework is something I've honed over a number of years, and most recently with collaborative communications. We are a full-service communications and organizational capacity building firm located in Washington, D.C., just a few blocks from the White House, and where all the action is downtown. And at Collaborative, I work with grantees, organizations, collective impact and place-based initiatives, helping them build capacity to align their outcomes, to align strategy, and align financing and communications, and make all of those pieces work in lockstep. Because at the end of the day, all of those pieces are part of sustainability. And I always look back on my time as a practitioner, as a grant maker, and as a federal program officer when I am presenting and thinking about sustainability. So let's jump into it. Here's me. You know, I'm known for kind of telling it like it is, so I'm going to do that right away from the beginning. And you know, this may be a bit provocative, but not every program should necessarily be sustained. You know, sustainability, you all have been working on it for 4 years. You know it's not a one-time conversation or planning session. You definitely know it is not just about the money, and that there are a number of factors that play into why one program is sustained and another is not. But let's think about some of the cases when a program or an initiative might not be sustained. Maybe the conditions have changed. Maybe you solved the problem you set out to solve with the program or the initiative that you started. Maybe there are now multiple organizations competing within the same space, and sustainability means thinking of a different way for those organizations to work together. And maybe you just found out that the approach or the project plan that you set forward to do just did not turn out to be successful. So over our time together, our next 75 minutes or so that we'll be talking, we're going to discuss the pre-work that you received to get an idea of what it is, not just for me to know what you want to sustain, but for your peers to know what you're looking to sustain. Because while it might, the temptation is to hold good ideas about sustainability close to your vest, it's honestly a great idea and a big help to share and talk about those strategies. I'm going to share some resources with you and give you kind of a roadmap of places to go to look for funding. We're going to talk about 3 sustainability strategies, and at the end of, by the end of the session, you can identify 3 priority activities to fund through a sustainability plan that you will work on going forward. So I know we asked, had a poll at the beginning asking how many folks were sitting with others and how many might be in their room. If I could get Angela or Joanna, I didn't see the response to that poll. Do we have a sense of kind of how many of the folks who are on the call today on the webinar are sitting with other team members?
Joanna, were you able to see those results?
I closed it, but I will open it up and just give me a moment, and then I will put it in the chat.
Sorry to make you do that, Joanna. And I should say, just to, while we're setting goals, to set some expectations in for working in your working within today's webinar, that please, I see some folks saying hello in the chat box from their locations, and I would really invite you to continue to put questions, ideas, thoughts, comments in the chat box. We will continue to monitor those all the way along and answer questions that you have and reflect on your ideas as you type them in there. So, you know, we talked about the importance of doing particularly the sustainability work, but really all of the work that you're doing as part of the YCC grant as a team, with partners, with stakeholders, because really your sustainability planning and the ideas that you generate will be so enhanced by having multiple voices, opinions, and ideas, especially when they come from people sitting at different chairs and having different experiences. We're also going to start from the assumption today that you all have a lot of activities that you want to keep going after your current grant funds end. So let's go ahead and transition to talk about the pre-work. So you received a pre-work worksheet a couple of weeks ago, and really what we wanted you to do through this pre-work is to reflect, because you really have to think about the past before going forward in sustainability planning, but wanted you to reflect on each of the elements in the YCC program and think about the activities that you implemented in each of those elements, and reflect on which activities you want to sustain, what you might not want to sustain, and what you perhaps would add now that you've had some time under your belt and you've gotten some feedback from the participants in your program. So the first thing I would love for you to chat in the chat box is looking at the first element that we've highlighted here, the career focus in high growth industry or occupation. Just chat in a few things that you will, that you're working to sustain in that area. And after you have an opportunity to enter some chat messages and ideas of what you'll sustain, we will we'll switch to some other areas. So we've got somebody who will sustain CNA training because that was successful. Manufacturing. Work-based learning and integrated academic learning, mentoring, great. So you've definitely found a number of activities that you all want to sustain. College partnerships, terrific. Project-based learning, engineering. Really these the elements that you're looking to sustain, I think very much align to what you've learned over time and what's been working in your program. Is there anything that you all are not going to sustain? Were there some things that you found to just not really work for you, or just didn't, didn't really have the oomph or the impact that you were looking for? So in some cases, Stacy notes the mentoring can be challenging to sustain. It perhaps isn't a significant cost, but it is certainly a lot of work to keep a mentoring program going. Any other activities? Oh, here we go. Small learning communities. 3 credit courses, funding for mentorship program. Seems like you all have done an awful lot of work and thinking already about what it is that worked and didn't work. Let's think about what you might add. Any new ideas or innovations that you perhaps have tested out over the period of your grant that you might try to add as you go forward with your program? New certifications, great. So this is terrific, and I hope that you found this chart or this tool, which isn't really anything that's too complex. Sometimes the simplest is the best, but we really wanted to give you an opportunity to reflect and perhaps think about what it is you're even going to sustain. It's hard to sustain a program. It's easier sometimes to sustain individual activities. So thanks, everybody, for giving us some really great ideas and for participating there. So one of the pieces that we talked about in the pre-work was thinking about resources to guide your decision making, and you've collected, as was noted in the chat, you've been collecting data, you've been participating in this peer learning group, and you've been able to, you've got grades, you've got attendance, you have all sorts of data and resources that you consulted, people who participated in the discussions. I wonder if anyone wants to share any particularly interesting or unique resources that you look to, or alternately, was there somebody who really played an important role in helping to make those decisions and to participate in those discussions about sustainability? As you were talking about career counselors, as you were talking about funding for transportation, who was influential in bringing those ideas to the fore? And while you're chatting in those responses, some other ideas and some other pieces to think about are some of the factors that were really key to the decision making about what to sustain and what not to sustain. Great, so principal feedback through surveys. What a terrific approach for getting some important feedback. And I think the survey there, Ellen, was an interesting approach. It kind of gives, particularly if principals did not share their name and share their school, because it really gives them an opportunity to make sure that you're not, or an opportunity for them to respond in a blind response, knowing that they would not necessarily be judged or there would be negative repercussions or bad feelings coming out of that survey. I think also a conversation with the superintendent is really important. We'll talk about the importance of kind of tracking where the goals that leaders have for work-based learning and for Youth Career Connections is really helpful and an important thing to track in sustainability. And I'm so glad to see that there was student involvement in some of the decision making about sustainability. That is, that's really key, right? It's gone are the days of if you build it, they will come. You really need to make sure that you're working with students as well as everyone else as integral partners. Great. It's really great to see, again, all of this thought that you all have put in so far into your sustainability planning, and the focus through the 4 years of the grant really is showing in your responses. So that's just terrific. So here at Collaborative, we talk about 4 sustainability actions. You know, sustainability is a process. We think it's really important to that this framework is active down to using verbs for the actions in the framework. You know, the pre-work that you did, as you can see, really addressed the first 2 actions in the framework. Assess, so really assessing where you've been and starting to think about where you're going next, and the analyze, making some data-driven decisions about what it is you're going to sustain. You know, taking that really fine-grained look, considering, as I can see from the responses that you've entered in the chat, both quantitative and qualitative data in helping you to make a decision. So for the rest of our time together today, we're going to talk about the other 2 actions, which is strategize, so really thinking about a strategic financing plan and a strategic revenue development plan that aligns to your project plan going forward, as well as execute, making sure that we're talking about how you might implement the strategy and how you're going to meet and assess your progress towards those ultimate goals of sustainability. So as any of you know, and I think I know it particularly well right now, when you're looking to sustain a program or when you're looking to make a family purchase, for instance, or a family investment, there are really 3 strategies that you can look to for raising the resources to sustain a project or to, you know, make a family vacation happen. A couple of years ago, my husband and I kind of fulfilled one of our dreams, and we went to France for our summer vacation to see the start of the Tour de France. And we actually applied almost all three of these sustainability strategies to our trip planning. Cost savings, we used some of the miles we had amassed to help see some savings and see a discount on our airfare. We leveraged a partnership in that we had a friend who is working in Paris right now, and when we were in Paris, we stayed at his apartment and got some in-kind lodging that way, so it cut down on our total price. And the revenue generation, well, that was saving up for the trip. But I guess the other piece I would add here is that cost savings piece is often overlooked when you sit down to start doing sustainability planning. You know, anytime you're building something new, and really with the Youth Career Connections grant, you certainly were building at least initially some infrastructure and some capacity and some knowledge to be able to implement the program in the community. You can think about those early on investments as cost savings or costs that you're not going to have to duplicate moving on into the future as you sustain. There might be some retraining or some orientation that you need to take into account as you move forward and bring new partners on. But the infrastructure that you built and that you'll continue will certainly be a cost savings to the program going forward. And I would just encourage you, as you're looking and thinking about your sustainability plan, to take a close eye and see where there are opportunities to net some cost savings. Well, let's start to talk about revenue generation. Revenue generation is typically where people immediately go when they're thinking about sustainability. They think about, you know, what grants can we get, what funding that's already there aligns to the work that we're trying to do, you know, and I think it's important here to remember that we are in the strategy phase of the sustainability actions, and that we want to think of revenue generation as a proactive activity and not a reactive activity. You know, while it's great to be in a place where you can respond to opportunities for funding that you see posted or something that just kind of comes off the transom, it is really important to develop a plan for your revenue generation. So, certainly federal funding, you have some federal funding now. Federal funding is should be part of your general revenue generation database or plan that you set out. And I'm sharing a screenshot now. The web address is down at the bottom of the page of an interactive tool that Collaborative Communications built with our partners at Jobs for the Future and our partners at the Forum for Youth Investment for another project. But it is certainly a tool and a resource that you all should take advantage of. When you go to the tool the first time, you'll be asked to register to use the tool. That registration doesn't go anywhere. It's just a way to track and stay in touch, and for us to be able to understand who's using the tool and how they and what might be helpful going forward. But this tool lists, and you can see right under the home button on the at the top left-hand side of the page, lists 146 records, 146 different federal funding streams across 9 agencies. Not all agencies are included here, but across 9 agencies who were relevant for the particular project, place-based initiatives and Promise Neighborhoods, Promise Zones project that we were providing technical assistance for. It's a super helpful tool because you can sort it, and in the corner, the bottom right-hand corner of the federal agency column, of the administrating office column, the type of assistant column, you see something that looks like a little funnel. If you were live on this website, you would be able to click on that funnel to do some sorting, and you'd be able to sort by agency. You could sort by further out on the right, there are a whole lot more columns and tabs of information. You can sort by program type. You can sort by the type of activities that they fund. This is not an all-inclusive list of funding for youth programs and funding that you might be able to tap into, but it's a place to start. It's a lot easier than going to every federal agency website and looking to see what they have to offer. So I'd encourage you to make use of the Leveraging Federal Funding Streams tool at JFF. There are a couple other sources that, as you're looking towards federal funding, that I would encourage you to consider. One is youth.gov. That is an interagency governmental website that offers all sorts of information about youth. One of its hallmark pieces of support is the Map My Community functionality. If you go to Map My Community, you can actually plug in a zip code and set sort of an area around that zip code, maybe within 5 miles of zip code 20191, for instance. And the database will pop up with federal funding for youth programs within that area. That's a way to get a handle or a vision on what kind of funds are already out in your community that you might talk to an organization about a partnership. Maybe, maybe there's a Boys and Girls Club nearby that you didn't realize was doing some workforce initiatives and you hadn't brought them in to be a partner. That would be a way to find out about those opportunities. The federal agency websites, of course, have program listings. Each agency website is a little bit different, but that is certainly a source for looking for federal funding. And then finally, the CFDA, the Catalog of Federal Domestic Assistance, which is kind of the granddaddy of them all, and lists all of the available funding for federal funding for all programs within the United States and its territories. So just to give you a scenario on how you might actually work with these tools together, let's say, for instance, you are looking for funding that would support your mentoring program. I saw a number of folks who were going to have to discontinuing the mentoring aspect of their program due to some funding constraints. So I might go, and again, this is a screenshot, but further over on the right, there would be an opportunity for you to dial in and just find all of the funding streams that could support mentoring. So you could sort and get all your mentoring funding that way, and you'd be able to identify a number of programs. With that knowledge, you could then move to Map My Community. And and see, plug in your zip code and see if anybody shows up having received some of those funding streams on the Map My Community tool. Maybe one of the funding streams that you found in that initial scan you've never heard of before and you want to learn more about it. Then you can either go directly to the federal agency website to look up the program there and get more information, or you can go to the CFDA website and get more information and develop a better understanding of that funding stream. Using all of those sources together will give you a pretty clear picture of how you might use the funding and where you would go to tap into it. So you certainly don't want to discount state funding. A number of states are focused on job training for adults, for youth, other employment readiness programs. It's a pretty hot topic right now in most states. So the first thing I would encourage you to do is go to the state budget and read that budget narrative. Read the speech that the governor gave introducing the current budget so that you can see, you know, what is it that is the primary focus of the governor and the legislature. It's going to change over time, but hopefully you'll see that that youth career development is one of those priorities. Another tool is the State Priorities Partnership website. This is a great clearinghouse website that connects you to organizations, independent organizations in each state that are the state budget advocates. So nearly every state and some of the territories have an organization within the state that their entire vision and mission is to keep track of the state budget, to let people know what it is, what the funding priorities for a given budget cycle are, to track some of the developments around new funding being discontinued. There are often links to other individuals within the state who you might turn to get more information. If you've got an organization that is part of the State Priorities Partnership, that is a really key and important place to go. And then, of course, the state agency budgets themselves. You know, some states, if you're lucky, you're in a state that has a really transparent budget and has information that's easy to get to. You know, that's just not the case for everybody, but that is really the place to go to understand what funding from different agencies are going to support elements that you are trying to sustain within your program. You know, a number of maybe not necessarily states, but a number of localities in the recent past have been creating one-card programs or transportation card programs that in larger jurisdictions where there's a pretty robust public transportation system gives students discounted or even free transportation when they're traveling to work or to school. You know, that would be something to try to track down in the state agency or budget or in a locality budget to see if there are some opportunities there. And if they don't exist, but if there is a transportation subsidy program, who you might talk to about getting it expanded to cover work-based learning opportunities. And of course, everybody would love to find the fairy godmother at a foundation who would just write a check for the entire cost of sustaining your program. And these are some resources where you can go to try to find those fairy godmothers or find some philanthropic opportunities that can help to sustain and support your program. You know, the Foundation Center has a giant searchable database. It's pretty daunting because it is such a comprehensive database. It's not the easiest thing to use. They've just updated it. It's better. It does, you do have to purchase a subscription to use the Foundation Center. Often public libraries have a subscription, and you can use computers at the public library to do that search, or if you've got a local center for nonprofits, they as well likely have a subscription to Foundation Center, and that's really the comprehensive place to go and get all of the foundations that might be funding youth workforce preparation, career exploration, many of the goals that you are trying to meet through your programs. Another really great place to go, though, if you haven't already signed up for all those issue advocacy group newsletters and topical newsletters, that is a really good place to get news of grants that are coming out. Again, they tend to be a little bit more reactive than proactive, but it's a good source. I see a request to go back to the previous slide, and I will. Let me just run through these. The state or local center for nonprofits and local community foundations. You know, particularly with the partnerships that you have built over time, a local community foundation might be a really nice source to look for some funding. So I'm back at the state state sources slide, and I hope that is where I had a request to go back to. I hope I'm on the right place. Wondering if the question might be about the State Priorities Partnership website, and the web links for all of the resources that I am noting in the presentation are on the virtual training page where the agenda is and all the other information about your virtual grantee training, the slides are also there as well. So you'll be able to go back and grab all that information. So we'll take a breath. Now we'll move into the next piece or the next sustainability strategy, which is on leveraging partnerships. While we're sort of taking that collective breath, I would encourage folks to, in the chat box, ask for any clarification or any questions about the revenue generation, particularly revenue generation looking at federal sources, state sources, and philanthropic sources. And there was a request to add Map My Community link to the chat. What I'm going to actually add to the chat is youth.gov. If you go to youth.gov, it's a really easy website to use, and they've got the top navigation with the little sort of horizontal lines at the top like you see in a lot of newly updated websites. And one of the options in that top navigation in that pull down is Map My Community. So if you go to youth.gov, you'll be able to get right there. And it's a super resource. I'm happy to be sharing it with all of you, and I think you'll find some real some real useful resources there. Thanks for putting up the direct link, Libby. All right. So let's think about partnerships. partnerships is another one of my soapbox issues, because so often when we think about partners, we think about this, we think kind of expansively about partners. And I would suggest for all of you to maybe think about the partners that you have in a bit of a more granular way. Certainly you have, you undoubtedly have a number of partners, and you can think about a true partnership as a give and a get, right? So someone decides to partner with you in support of your YCC grant because they certainly have something to give, but reciprocally, they're also getting something out of the opportunity. One of you mentioned early on that one of the pieces that you're going to sustain is a partnership where the youth participating in your program get college credit awarded through a local community college or university. Apologies if I because I don't recall which it is. But there's certainly, that's a great example of a partnership where there's a give and a get. So the benefit to your program and your youth, certainly that they're earning those college credits, that they are probably less expensive credits than they will be pursuing when they matriculate in a 2- or 4-year school, and you know, that it's just great to have that on their resume and on their academic transcript. The college or university is also benefiting. It's additional revenue for them because the student is paying for that credit, and it is also a way to bring new students into their fold, to attract additional students to their college or university because of the experience that you've had while taking that course. So there's a give and a get. You know, you may have some partners who you call partners who are really simply there on your partner list because they're giving you money. Either they're funding a particular part of the program or they've just given you a general donation to cover costs. And trust me, there is nothing wrong with those kind of partners. They're great partners to have. And then the last type of partnership you might have is more of a contractual partnership where you have hired someone to provide a service either to the youth, to the teachers, to the counselors, to somebody within your program because of particular expertise that they have, or because it's just more cost-effective to run part of your program through a contractual relationship than it is to perhaps run it through a local school system. So we'll talk a bit more about these partners, but I wanted to get a sense of how many partners each of you have with your program right now. And I think we have a poll question loaded up for you, and I'd like you to select the number of partners that you have. Do you have between 0 and 5, 6 and 9, 9 to 15, or 16 or more? Go ahead and check your answer, check which where you fall, and Joanna will close that poll in a minute, and we'll see the results. Be really interesting to see where people fall. excited to talk a bit more about partnerships. Joanna, can you let me know which category had the most? For some reason, I am not seeing the, oh, there you go. Now it's going there, I think. I was not seeing the results of the poll. All right. You guys are an incredible group because you, 60% of you have 16 or more partners. So I think follow-up from here is going to be for me to talk to some of you to learn from your wisdom about how you've maintained such a large and robust number of partners, because that is not an easy thing to do. So kudos to all of you. And let's and I think you know, there's still some good things to talk about and to think about, and I hope what I share here will give you some new approaches and new ways to think about partnerships as you move into your sustainability planning process. So, you know, so we talked about these different types of partners earlier, the just give and get partnership or the reciprocal partnership, the donor-funder partnership, and the contracted services partnership. Certainly, as you're continuing to work on these partnerships and cultivate them and communicate with those partners, because remember, a really big piece of sustainability is the communication and the relationships that you are that you're cultivating along the way. It's helpful to think a bit about the relationship expectations and some of the ways that you will keep the lines of communications open with those different types of partners. So, you know, the contracted service relationship, it's a pretty transactional relationship. You want to make sure that you have got, you know, a solid contract or letter of agreement that you are working from, and that is designed in such a way that you're getting the sort of information from that contracted service provider that you need, you know, from a sustainability standpoint. There may be some metrics, right, some outputs that you want to get from that contracted service provider that you can include in the metrics that you report for your grant success. You know, the donor-funder relationship, it's really, it's altruism, it's this sense of doing something good in the community, to giving somebody else a leg up or support. And you'll probably communicate with those donors and funders through a proposal that you write to them, acknowledging them in the annual report, maybe even perhaps citing the relationship that you have with them in evaluations that you do of the program. And then, of course, the partnership, you know, we call it a reciprocal partnership because we want it to be mutually beneficial. You've probably established a memorandum of understanding with that particular partner, but can also consider some opportunities, especially now since these reciprocal partnerships for many of you are pretty long-standing and highly evolved, to look at some opportunities where you might be in the media together. And I would invite you to think beyond just having a reporter come out to an event to co-authoring a letter to the editor or co-authoring a commentary piece. You know, you're probably learning things through this partnership that are worthy of sharing and ideas that are worthy of putting out into the public arena. Perhaps there's an opportunity to jointly produce a best practice brief to share with your peers, to go on the conference circuit and share what you've learned through a conference presentation. All of these communication examples and strategies are ways to sustain those partnerships and maybe build those partnerships and take them to the next level. The language by which you describe your partnership also says a lot about your relationship. You know, the partnerships that you have, and I'm sure many of you have already seen this, are going to grow over time. They're going to change. And that is okay. There may be times that an employer partner needs to step back and not play the same role that they played previously because they're undergoing a leadership change. But this is kind of the triangle or the pyramid, if you will, of cooperation, coordination, and collaboration. So thinking about a cooperative relationship where you're two trains running along parallel tracks, right? You've got perhaps a shared vision, but the action that you're taking to reach that vision is parallel and not necessarily joint. As your relationship with a partner or with an organization evolves and deepens, you start to move from cooperation to coordination. Your efforts become a little bit more tightly tied. Maybe you do a couple of activities where you share leadership or you support one another in a particular activity. And then, of course, at the very peak of the collaboration triangle is the collaborative relationship. And that is it's hard to get to and it's hard to maintain, but it's really exciting when you get to that synergy. And you're really moving from just having a shared vision or a shared mission to actively working together to accomplish that mission and vision. And you start to no longer see individual organizations working towards a shared goal, but really that the organizations are working in such lockstep that it's almost like one big organization working towards a particular goal or working to achieve a particular outcome. So hopefully these two charts, both the relationship type and expectations and communication examples and this pyramid will be helpful for you to think about and helpful language for you to borrow to frame some of the partnerships and relationships that you have as you start to talk about them from a sustainability perspective. So you all know why it's important to engage community partners. You get more collaboration, you can make better use of resources, there's less competition for resources, and that increased program visibility, of course, helps you to develop that public will for sustainability. And you certainly know the benefits of partnership, those new perspectives, those new resources, and those new skills. As we're talking about a couple of kind of this framework for thinking about your partnership development and assessment, I'd love for you to chat in some little mini partnership success stories for for your peers, to share with your peers in the chat box, and certainly know that this chat will be captured for you to reflect upon after today's session, but would love to see some of those partnership success stories. So I'd like you to think about your continued partnership development and your work with partners in a three-step cyclical process, really aligned to a continuous improvement process, taking measure, taking stock, and taking action over and over and over again, as you know. Oops, I'm a little frozen. There we go, take measure, first step. So this is a tool that I will share with you all after the webinar, and will invite you to use it to assess some of your partnerships that you've developed. This is a tool that we developed a long time ago, but really has a lot of applicability, and it didn't reproduce very well here, but it gives you, I'll talk you through it a little bit. It gives you just some thinking prompts, if you will. It's got a very simple Likert scale: strongly agree, agree, disagree, and that last one should be strongly disagree, and ask you to think about your partnership on a couple of different parameters. So, you know, our partnerships have developed visions and purpose. We have agreed upon roles and responsibilities for each individual partner. Everybody involved in our partnership has an understanding of each other's roles, activities, strengths, and resources. And, you know, that one for sure can be a bit of a challenge when you have a large number of partners. So thinking about the follow-up from today's webinars, I'd be interested in hearing, and I'm sure your peers would be interested in hearing, about how some of you manage that that shared knowledge and developing that shared knowledge of the many partners that you have around the table. Some strategies that your program regular uses to keep all of the partners informed of the progress of the work together. You know, I anticipate that a number of you have found some really terrific ways to keep everybody aware of the successes of your shared work, and that's one of the factors that help to keep partners at the table. And also thinking about particular ways, and the last one, that partners can actually work to sustain the program. So really taking those long-standing partnerships and finding the time that's right to maybe up their investment, up their engagement, get them to put a bit more skin in the game, particularly at this point where you really need to be looking for some new sustainability strategies. So taking stock. You know, a couple of the really important things to continually ask yourselves about your partners. First, you know, how do the partners you have align with your program's needs? Your needs are always changing, so as we discussed earlier, your partnerships are going to change over time. thinking about and having brainstorming conversations on a pretty regular basis about who in the community has access to resources that you need, and how well does their mission align to yours. Just this morning, I had a conversation with a colleague who brokered some relationship building conversations for my organization last week. It was actually around a summer youth employment program. We spent not long on the phone today, maybe 15 minutes, but part of the time that we spent on the phone was brainstorming some additional resources in the community where we're working that could support the Summer Youth Employment Program. She had some ideas that we hadn't come up with yet, and I was able to float a couple of ideas that I had to her and kind of see how she reacted to those ideas. And then, of course, finally, what's a super important factor when you're thinking about partnerships and when you are assessing your partnerships is, framing the win-win, the give and get for each individual partnership. Keep chatting in those success stories and questions. So finally, we're on the take action step. And, we've talked about these big ideas through the partnership section. We will just summarize those right here. So again, it's always important to start with strategies and activities. Make sure that you have a reason for the partnership and that reason is, pretty specific. Brainstorm some potential partners and know that shared vision is an important piece. Perfect your pitch, create some talking points that will speak to the reciprocal nature of the partnership that you are that you're looking to gain or to create. And the last one, which we didn't talk much about, but which actually the example that Erica typed in relates to, is to have an engagement plan, to think about who, how, and when to approach the new partner. And Erica, definitely looks like you did that. You had 5 manufacturers meet with the mayor to advocate for continued support from the city to sustain the Manufacturing Connect program, moving beyond the YCC grant. Perfect example of coming up with a thoughtful and deliberate strategic engagement plan. And yes, Ellen, congrats to Erica. That's super. It's manufacturers in a community, particularly in a community like Chicago. Absolutely somebody the mayor is going to listen to. So you've got some incredible partnerships, and you should absolutely leverage them to support your quest for sustainability. It sounds like we've got some folks who have raised their hand, and I'm sorry I didn't catch that. Who want to ask some live questions. So, Joanna, if you can help facilitate that, I'm happy to answer questions.
If you'd like to ask a question over the phone, you can do so just by hitting the raise your hand button, too, and I'll unmute you.
Thanks, Joanna. And we've got We've got another idea or another example. A local IT company hosted a networking event with top tech leaders and students where students have an opportunity to learn about careers in IT. That's fantastic. Love that idea.
Hey, Joanna, it looks like Jan Bailey and Amy Franco have their hands raised. I'm not sure if that was from earlier. I know they typed some comments in. So do you want to try and unmute Jan Bailey, and we'll see if she wants to add something to the conversation?
Jan, you are unmuted if you have a question.
Well, actually, I don't have a specific one here. I'm encouraged to hear all the things about partnerships because we do have several, and particularly I think my interest was on the communication pieces, how those could all come together a little bit better to continue the program.
Sure. Jan, what are you doing currently around communicating with partners?
Well, we have an advisory committee, so that's quarterly, and we will send out just emails to targeted groups because we've got many schools and, you know, divides into superintendents and principals. I have not used social media a lot because the college has some parameters around that, so that's not been a tool that we've used a lot. But, you know, some of the things that I've circled that frame on my page that I've got printed here, and you know, we do have letters of agreement, but you know, I think they probably need to be updated on an annual basis, and you know, but I just really was interested in that piece that you have on communication.
Sure, a couple of ideas. I think you're right, absolutely, on getting in an annual cycle of updating those letters of agreement. And if you have a lot of partners, I would think about, so that it doesn't become an overwhelming task, I would think about, you know, annualizing that from when the agreement was signed, as opposed to kind of saying it's September, I'm gonna renew everybody's letter of agreement. It just gives sort of this nice milestone opportunity to have a formal meeting with a partner to thank them for their partnership, to solicit feedback, and to just, you know, brainstorm together on what you all could do. You know, a couple of things around social media, because I know when dealing with school systems and dealing with universities, social media can be tricky because there are restrictions on the types of accounts you can have and who can post and who manages. But you might think about actually leveraging your partners to do social media for you. So we actually just created, you'd never believe how easy it is to create a recognition day, but you know what? To create a recognition day, all you have to do is have the idea. We actually created a recognition day yesterday and reached out to 20 national partners and gave them a list of social media messages to put out during the course of the day, gave them some graphics that they could post with those social media messages, and had really outstanding results. And, you know, picked up a dozen folks recognizing the cause over the course of the day that we didn't anticipate. So, you know, another opportunity to bring folks together or to bring recognition to your efforts and to your program would be to get all of your partners to coalesce and schedule some social media promotion on a particular day or around a particular event. So those are a couple of really tangible communications opportunities that are not too heavy of a lift, particularly if you've got some advisory committee or a student advisory committee that you might be able to leverage to write some of that social media for you. It also looks like Amy maybe had her hand up. Am I seeing that right?
Amy said she did not have a question. So,
okay.
So far, I don't have any others with a hand raised.
Thanks, Joanna. Well, you should absolutely feel free to raise those hands. And you know, further on the communications front, I think it is it's such an opportunity, and we're seeing it in these partner success stories that people are typing in and that people are sharing, that they really are leveraging the power of some of their high-profile partners to draw attention to the work that they're doing, whether it's you know, whether it's having them go and speak to leaders on their behalf, or you know, hosting a networking event that might establish some new partnership relationships, as well as provide an opportunity for students to engage with some leaders and some folks in a career area that they're interested. I think that is really terrific and a really smart way to expand your reach, to get your program out there and known, and to be able to not have perhaps school district or college or university or other institutional barriers that might exist when you're trying to get your story out. The last thing I'll say about the communication piece, since it seems to be a place where people have some interest, is you should absolutely work with the folks within your system, whether you're at a university, whether you're at a large organization, whether you're at a school system. Work with the Public Information Officer's office or the communications office to get information out about your program and about the great things that you do. They all have newsletters and email blasts and information that they need to get out into the public. And, you know, scheduling just an email or even better yet, a sit-down conversation with those individuals on a quarterly or twice-a-year basis keeps you front of mind for them, and when they're, you know, when an opportunity crosses their desk that might be a good fit for you, they're going to be more likely to turn to you and reach out to you because you've been cultivating that relationship along the way. Well, I see we are closing in on our time together, and I hope you've gotten some new ideas out of what we've presented here today, what I presented here today on sustainability, and absolutely want to thank everybody for the opportunity to share and talk with you, and to thank all of you for participating through the chat and sharing all your really good ideas and success stories with your peers. You're doing great work, and you absolutely have done those, it's really evident from the pre-work, some of those critically important initial steps in assessing where you've been and where you want to go, and analyzing data that you have at hand and resources that you have in hand to determine what it is you should sustain, and look forward to talking with you all on the follow-up coaching call on May the 10th to begin to hear some of the sustainability strategies and action steps that you're going to take to get the resources at hand that you need to sustain and add the activities that you've identified. So my charge to all of you between now and then is to identify 3 steps that you're going to pursue to sustain your program. And they can be within the 3 sustainability strategies that we mentioned earlier: cost-cutting, revenue generation, or leveraging partnerships. Or they might be related to some of the partnership strengthening and communications strategies that we talked about in the second half of today's webinar. And as promised, I will share the partnership assessment tool with you as well, so that you can take a look at that and see what kind of conversation that prompts. I know you've got a lot of great content coming on its way to you later this afternoon and tomorrow. And at this point, can turn it over for any last questions and any final thoughts that the team has.
Great. If there are no other questions for Sean, I wanted to take this time to thank her so much for her time with us today and sharing all that really great information. So we will be sending out information about the May 10th follow-up call. So there will be a continuation to this discussion, and come prepared to think through and brainstorm with your colleagues across the country on that. So thanks again, Sean, so much for all of your information.